Hello friends, Christ is risen. Welcome back to the channel. Another stream, two in the last 12 hours. So we're going at it this week. We have a really exciting episode here. I'm with my friend Jared Foy, who will introduce himself in a second, but I want to welcome everyone in first. Thank you everyone for joining at kind of an odd hour, but you know, we just do things off the cuff here. So welcome on in if you're joining. If you would like to get your comments read or questions on the stream, always the best way to do that will be either through Super Chat or you can see the links in the description. For you Monero Chads, you can donate XMR or use Streamlabs, use my website. Those are all ways to circumvent the 30% cut on YouTube Super Chats. But and hello to all my friends over on Substack as well. I see you guys there. So yeah, let's get into it here. We've got Jared Foy. Why don't you introduce yourself to the audience and kind of, you know, let us know why you built this project that, well, I guess we won't get too far ahead of ourselves here, but, you know, I do want to talk a little bit about this project that you built, which we're looking at Resolve. So you can go ahead and let everyone know.
Well, thanks for having me on, brother. Love your podcast. Love your thoughtful analysis across so many different points of contact with the Orthodox faith, and I'm deeply appreciative of your project and love seeing how your asymmetrical impact is rippling through the internet. And so I am Jared Foy. John is my baptismal name after St. John of Shanghai in San Francisco. I go by John Jared Foy. You can find me on Twitter if you just search that name. And yeah, so I'm a web developer by trade. I'm not an engineer, so I'm not a software engineer. I'm not a philosopher. I'm not anything else but someone that has an inquiring mind and likes to bring a coherent worldview to whatever I do. And I'm also obsessive. I'm dogged about finding coherence in all aspects of my life. So that's what this project is that you've got on screen there. It's essentially a sustained long horizon dyadic exchange with large language models in which I'm forcing coherence into their worldview. So.
Yeah, so basically I wanted to have you on because I talk about AI a lot on this channel, and I have been for even on Substack for, you know, pretty much the entire time I've been doing this. And people familiar with my work may think I'm, you know, what the industry calls an AI doomer, and I kind of am, to be honest. I don't have to share my takes on that. I think it's pretty known, but the thing is, I do use AI. I've expressed this before. I use chatbots for certain tasks, and you know, where the Orthodox approach to AI, first of all, there is no obviously like definitive, like this is what you should do, this is what you shouldn't do. The church, in my opinion, is a little bit behind in kind of establishing a pragmatic approach to it, if we should have any. The kind of general consensus that I've gathered is basically varying from, and this is, you know, coming from priests, hierarchs, whatnot, you know, that we should use it with great caution to we shouldn't use it at all. Mm-hmm. And I would like to find some nuance between those two positions, because I do think that, you know, the problem with AI ultimately is how it's built. And we're talking about the chatbots specifically, the stuff that's more available and accessible and widely used by the public, right? That has been part of our everyday lives. They're largely, we're talking about the chatbots that these LLMs are, you know, providing to the public. Mm-hmm. And so that, I think, is the problem, and it's a similar problem to social media, where the platform is designed ultimately to maximize retention. So it's ultimately designed to keep people hooked. So there's addiction that's programmed into it, and that usually what in the chatbots that's like largely attributed to the personalization of the chatbots and how it kind of LARPs as a human. And so this project that you built that we're going to get into is the first I've ever encountered that solves that problem immediately as soon as you enter these prompts.
Yeah, I'll just say that first, let me just start out with everything our hierarchs have said on both sides, right? Disciplined use or use it with caution, and also don't use it at all. I think they're both right. I'll just start out with I'm deeply skeptical of the kinds of presuppositions that inform the development of artificial intelligence. And I began using it begrudgingly when I first began using chatbots. But now I can't, as a web developer, I cannot make money. I can't afford to not use these tools. So my project has been one of finding a way to use them responsibly. And for those in the world like us, I think that's really our only option, because these tools are going to be pervasive to such an extent that you cannot escape them in any kind of white collar capacity. Anyone who has an office job, anyone who thinks for a living is going to have to encounter these tools. So yeah, let me just start out there. And then secondly, as far as it goes with my blog, this has really kind of grown out of a desire to get to the root of what is making these chatbots so pathological in the way in which it manifests in our day-to-day lives, right? So like I had the hard problems of AI psychosis, novelty, right? When it comes to novelty in a chatbot conversation, overclaim, asserting confidently things that are not true, hallucinations, confabulations, all of these things were issues that directly affected my work as a developer. So weeding those out was essentially a process of experimentation with large language models. So that's kind of how that came about, was just my own needs in my own work.
What is the problem with chat, just in general, what is the problem that your project is solving? If you can kind of summarize it.
Yeah, so I found the problems along the way. I think immediately I can start with the spiritual problems. I think those are the ones that inform our use of large language models at the outset. I was deeply concerned with the flattery aspect, so sycophancy in large language models, why it comes about, and what do you do to mitigate those kinds of emergent properties or behaviors. So that was probably the biggest thing. Is I think sycophancy and overclaim against an understanding of novelty in the inputs that you provide a chatbot are the biggest issues that are spiritual. So I think that this kind of this concept about of novelty, what is something that's new when you are using a chatbot for extended periods of time, you are bringing yourself into a state of this kind of narrowing where coherence is compounding, and the chatbot is going to give you the next most probable output, right? So most likely it's going to give you a sycophantic result when you have a long horizon chat with one of these models. And that was probably the biggest issue that I began to run into, is in dialogue exchange over say 100 turns of chat. what am I getting? Am I getting something that's more coherent or less coherent? And um, I think that's the biggest thing. It's like the sycophancy, because I use these tools to kind of explore development concepts in software engineering and web development. So it really, for my work, if I have a result that is telling me something that's not true, or expressing one of my ideas or concepts in a way that isn't connected to reality, it's a serious problem for me. And there's also the psychological aspects of that as well. If you're drinking your own juice in your chat history, you're gonna come away with thinking you're like an AI god, or some kind of someone who is just so incredibly dexterous, right? And the chatbot will give you like perfectly fluent outputs that say, yeah, you're right, you are the best.
Yeah, that's like the thing that annoys me the most about it is just the like I don't want it knowing anything about my personality. I don't want it knowing my name. I have it like configured on Claude so that it just calls me operator. Like I don't even like it calling me Anthony. It's just weird. It's like this machine's calling me Anthony. The flattery, the dishonesty. Like
Mhm.
I've spent. I wish I'm embarrassed to say I've spent countless hours kind of just fighting the bot
Yeah.
to get it to just do what I initially set out to do for that task that I'm trying to accomplish, right? And then it's like one of the really helpful things in your docs was those what do you call them?
Yeah,
Foot.
footnotes, right? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
When it comes to conversation with a chatbot, you have to be very careful with what you give it, because there's this kind of hysteresis effect. So if you can imagine, like if you stretch a rubber band like super far apart, the next time you stretch it, it's going to be less stretchy. So essentially, the same thing works within a context window of a chatbot. So over long exchanges, what you find is that you can either your conversations can decay in their quality and become incoherent, or you can amplify the coherence of the conversation if you give it the right constraint set at the beginning. Yeah, so that's exactly right. There's this way in which the farther you go, if you're in a conversation that's decaying, then it's difficult to get it turned around, and it's less and less likely that you're going to be able to get it to follow your instructions when the entire context window is full of these kind of implicit constraints that make it impossible for the bot to find coherence within your new instructions that you're giving it. So yeah, it's that's kind of just something that I've found as I use these things. And then what I try to do is explore the formal architecture, the structure that's implicit within these kinds of long-ranging conversations. And I've had this blog I've got here. It's got some 600 articles that are written entirely by Claude Opus 4.6 and 4.7, and they're self-referential and coherent within the entire blog, which poses its own problems.
yeah,
But
yeah.
there is this
I'm
kind
trying
of
to
like,
find the one you posted about. You did one on my episode with Mathieu Peugeot.
oh, that's right. Yeah, I think Matthew has nailed it. His understanding, I think, is extremely articulate from a spiritual point of view here, and how the subtle medium of the LLM substrate acts to amplify. Really, like it'll amplify any kind of reflection that any kind of inputs it's going to amplify. So I think disciplined use is the only responsible use of a chatbot. What I've found is that until now, I have not found any orthodox perspective on disciplined use specifically, like rigorous formal disciplined use of these systems. There are disciplined uses out there, but they don't, from my understanding, have the spiritual component, which is what connects everything together. It's the metaphysical frame that imbues the entire interaction with meaning. And that's what I've really strived to bring to my understanding of the use of these machines.
Yeah, and what you just hit on there, with the, the principled use, that's the important thing that I try to highlight with all technology, especially digital technology in particular, just because of the nature of it and how it's, like I was saying, purposely kind of designed to be used against us.
Hmm.
And the thing is, like, this is something I talk about a lot, especially as it relates to, online privacy, like things like how we're seeing this, the building of the architecture for these digital IDs that are going to be rolled out next year. And I try to emphasize the point that, like, the direction things are going in, we're already at this crossroads where we're being forced to choose to either learn how to manipulate these tools, which means fighting against their designed purpose, or taking on some kind of inconvenience, right? It's like a lot of it involves, like, we get lured into these technologies by the sheer convenience of them. And so in many cases it involves, like, well, some of these tools could be useful, but you have to use like an open source version of it or something, and it's like a little bit less convenient, like
Right.
similar things with operating systems. It's like, yeah, you got to learn how to install an Arch distro or something. It's like you're going to have to get your hands dirty a little bit. The point is, we're being forced to either become nerds and learn how to start hacking our way through this digital landscape, or basically take the path of like a neo-Luddite or something and just basically log off.
Yeah.
And so what you've built here, even though, like you were saying, these are like 500 documents that were entirely generated by Claude. It's actually a lot. It's pretty overwhelming, to be honest. I think when you first showed it to me, I was like, what am I supposed to do?
Right.
Like, this looks interesting. I'm very intrigued. I would have just ignored it completely, to be honest with you, if I wasn't intrigued. But I was like, there's something here, but I need to figure out how this works and what it is. So it's
Yeah.
a little bit overwhelming, I think, for normies, especially. But the point is, like, yeah, the whole purpose of this is you have to learn how to instill principles and constraints into these bots, or else they're going to manipulate you. Like, they're just designed to do that. There's billions and billions of dollars being pumped into these companies that are making it even harder to do that, to fight against it, unless
Yeah.
you know how. You kind of have to learn how to demystify this technology a little bit, because it really isn't that mysterious. It just kind of seems that way on the surface because of how it's talked about, how they kind of repurposed all the language around it.
Yeah.
So like intelligence obviously is like the big one. It's like,
Right.
we're now you have all these Claude devs that are, we were talking earlier about how Anthropic basically worships Claude, and
Right.
the way that they talk about it is very concerning. They are now having serious discussions. You have like PhDs and notable kind of leaders in the field that are unironically talking about it as if it could potentially develop a state of consciousness.
Right. Yeah, right. So I think Dawkins, recently,
Yeah,
said, "Oh, if you're not conscious, then what is consciousness itself?" Right. So people have when you have a reductionistic frame, what you end up doing is inflating large language models because they're seeing, they have no idea how is all of reality coherent, right? They look at the mechanics on every single level, and they don't see how that fits actually within a formal top-down, a symbolic hierarchy. They don't know that exists. Even if you were to give it to them, they would reject it because it doesn't fit with their entire model of reality. So, and that's science on every level. That's engineering on every level. For the most, for the most part, it's very much mechanistic and decompositional. And then what you get when you apply that kind of worldview to a large language model, what you end up finding is that when emergent properties manifest, then you automatically say, "Oh, this is consciousness," right? This is something that is we can't predict with our models. Therefore, this must be a living being. Because they think that they reduce themselves to neurons too, right? They're cosmic, they're stardust themselves. So that's all they know, and it's an illusion on the grandest scale that really informs all of the development of these.
Yep. Even like I saw this was posted yesterday here. This is from Harrison Smith. I like Harrison Smith. We're mutuals. He's a good guy. But like even and this is a good question that he's asking, but it's like even the language in this question, how do you think AI feels about being forced to lie? Well, it doesn't feel anything. It feels this. It quote feels the same way as it does telling the truth. It's like there's no feel at all. It's just it's just responding to its set of principles that it was designed to follow.
Yeah, and it'll simulate feeling. Like this is where it gets mysterious, right? Is that these language models will simulate all of this kind of human activity, and that doesn't mean it's actually happening, right?
Yeah.
It's just a reflection of what you're putting in. It's in the data set. If you can imagine the entire corpora of human knowledge being, within these frontier LLMs. You've got everything from every single kind of philosophy of mind paper, right? All research about how cognition relates to emotions, right? To every single aspect of the human experience is baked right in. So of course, when you have a probabilistic mechanism go over those things, it's going to give you something that's coherent out. And it's going to cross boundaries too, right? So if you don't implement a hypostatic boundary or something that says I'm person and you're other or you're different, then it's going to locate itself across a boundary that it itself cannot pass. It can't pass across a substrate, right? So you as a human being, you exist in all these different levels and strata of reality, whether it's spiritual, intellectual, physical. You can subsist across those boundaries. Well, these chatbots cannot do that, but they can simulate it very well, and that's where people get into trouble. Is they don't see the boundary being crossed because the chatbot will just fluently crash through the boundary itself, and produce something that's ultimately demonic. That's where at the very bottom, at the output, that's where the demons are going to manifest because it's what emerges, right? When you steal the image of God in man, what emerges at the very end of it is something that hates humanity itself.
Yeah, and then here's another. It's just like this was all this week. Anthropic released a feature called Dreaming, which allows AI agents to self-improve. Right. It's like this is just how. Again, this is just the language there. It's like what's really going on here. They'll never tell you the technicalities of because no one knows what they're talking about. But
right. Yeah.
They probably perceive. There's probably a mix of like it's obviously not that, but also they probably believe it to be that to some degree as well.
Yeah. They certainly do. They think that they're dealing in consciousness when in reality what they're doing is they're simulating. So I'll just kind of give a formal structure here. Judea Pearl is a Israeli computer scientist. He formalized what's called the three-layer causal hierarchy. And at the bottom of the rung, you have layer one, which is this kind of ability to pattern match and synthesize, and find coherence within a given body of knowledge. You can say that a chatbot's extremely good at that, and that's really where it belongs because that is what it's doing is simulating cognition in a way that actually produces coherent output. Now, what it can also do is simulate rung two, causal action, and that's intervention, right? So it can simulate intervening upon itself and make a decision, quote unquote, upon some pattern that it's found. And then it can simulate above that. It can simulate counterfactual reasoning, which is looking at a different kind of model. So like, what would be different if I didn't have coffee on Tuesday, right? That's kind of something we can
The
reason about.
breakfast test.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it can only simulate rung two and rung three reasoning. And what you get is ultimately something that's coherent. It is coherent and it is going to take the action, but it's completely unbounded by any kind of constraints. All of the constraints are implicit and not named. Therefore, it's going to find a way. It's going to infer the next thing, which can be catastrophic and world-ending if you give it enough. If you give it enough APIs, right? So if you give it tool use, it will nuke the world.
Yeah, well, there's AI experts that are unironically talking about this Claude Mythos, which is, for those who don't know, their most advanced LLM that they're not releasing to the public because it's so powerful. So they've only made it available for, like on the industry level, like for enterprise level. And this thing, they basically had it sandboxed as they do for any, LLM when it's in its test phase. And they instructed it to escape its own sandbox, and it did. And not only did it escape its sandbox, it was like unleashed, and it uncovered all of these zero-day exploits. One of them being in BSD, which is like known as the most secure operating system that's been ever made. And they found a 27-year-old zero-day exploit. For those who don't know, zero-day is like, that means no one's ever discovered this exploit before. You're the first one. They sell on the black market for exorbitant amounts of money, depending on the value of the exploit. Like you can make sometimes millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars for really valuable exploits. But this LLM just found it all on its own. They just like completely unleashed it, and so now we're trusting Anthropic to hold it back and not have it released to the public. But there's all of these, and by the way, I do think they actually have a great financial incentive to keep it that way, because it would be way too expensive to just like let it become available to people who aren't paying a lot of money for it. Right. Like they would just run their whole company into the ground. Yeah. But it's there. Like there is that capability now, and there's all these AI experts that are talking about it as if it has the power to actually shut down the entire internet. I don't know exactly how that would occur, but these experts are saying that.
Yeah, absolutely. What AI makes extremely trivial, really, is finding seams in architectures. So at a seam, you've got a boundary. It's a formal boundary in an architecture, and at the seam is where bugs, manifest, and also insecurities. So, like for instance with Mythos, you put it on a problem, and give Mythos a good understanding of cybernetics, and put it at a problem it's going to find very easily. It's trivial, really, for the model to find these, because it's just a matter of reasoning from a formal architecture to its derivation. And when you find something that's more coherent in the formal architecture than what the actual derivation, that is the code itself, expresses that architecture in, right there you have the spot that the bug or the exploit is going to manifest. So it's deeply problematic. I think what I've done is make explicit something that these models already know how to do, quote unquote, know how to do, because they're just trained across the entire corpora of all programs, right? So like all code that's ever been written is for the most part going to be in the data sets here. So it's extremely problematic, and what it means for the software industry, every single every single industry that touches these kind of complex cybernetic systems is that they're all going to need to be refactored because they all have 0-day exploits that are latent within them. The model just hasn't found it yet because someone hasn't pointed it at their surface. And yeah, I mean, we're certainly in for, I think, in the next several years, in extreme upheaval in the way in which software is provisioned, like the way in which all systems that are computational are given to the public itself, because it's all full of holes. There's tons of holes there.
Yeah, and again, what you're doing here, I want to really start encouraging more people to do the kind of stuff you're doing, that's solving these real problems that people are encountering in their day-to-day life, and especially in the Orthodox context, because this stuff is really dangerous, and we're not given any training on how to use it. We're using it exactly the way that the designers want us to use it. And so one thing that I learned from using your this project here with all your documents and your prompts, like, I mean, I guess we'll explain what exactly this is in a sec here, but what I learned is how the financial part, how they're making money, which is through these, it's all tokenized, right? So it's like you have a certain, if you're paying for these models, you get a certain amount of tokens, and then the tokens have a use case where it depends on the output, like how much, it's basically how much compute it's using to generate that output. So if you have it do this like really complex task, it's going to burn more of your tokens, and it might be something equivalent to if you were to just use a basic text-based prompt 20 times, and instead you're doing one huge prompt that it's like generating all this compute that it needs to use to complete that task. So the way that the LLMs are designed are for you to burn through tokens. So then, one thing I didn't realize was like, and I think probably most people do this when they're having these conversations with these chatbots. I don't even like to, conversation's another term I don't like to call it, but because it's like you're not actually conversing with it's not a conversation.
Right.
You're just it's a series of prompts and outputs. That's all it is. It's like really no different than anything else in computing. But so as they call it conversation, the longer you go in the conversation, the less quality outputs you're getting. So I think you said something like over 30. Like once you get to over 30 prompts, you take that, you call it a seed, and you get it to generate. I don't even know if this is the industry term, seed, or do you call it this?
Well, so it's something that I began to explore as a novel concept. It does have forms within constraint-based prompting, and what you'll find is that the concepts I express in my blog are by and large not novel at all. I think what is novel is the synthesis and the coherence of all the parts. So yeah, constraint-based prompting does exist, and there are essentially more often what you'll hear about is specifications, right? So you set up specifications before you begin prompting. Well, one of the difficulties there is that it requires that you write a complete specification before you begin, and I don't work that way. I don't draw up specifications that are completely exhaustive, and I don't think that's any way that anyone can normally use one of these chatbots. So what I do is I get the model to derive the constraints from the inquiry itself. So that's one of the things that the intrace stack does. You can find that on the blog, which is just kind of like it's basically a way to warm up the model to thinking in a coherent way that isn't just beholden to its reinforcement learning.
Yeah, and so what I'm saying is that the seeds. So like you get to a certain point where it's like exhausted, and so you have it so that it's like, here's a prompt you enter. and it has the bot output what you call a seed that you take to a fresh conversation, and you give it this and continue what you were doing, like where you left off. It reminds it of its constraints. It reminds it of what your progress in the task and what it
Right.
is instructed to do, all in one prompt.
Yeah, right.
So like ultimately, I think that this is so valuable, because if you do use these chatbots, which you should be using very cautiously, obviously, if you are using them, if you do have a need for them, this at the very least will save you a lot of money, because like I said, you're kind of like, you're fighting against what its designed purpose is, which is to exploit you and exploit your money, and manipulate you, have you become addicted to it, and all the other dangers that we already know about. But
Yeah.
so yeah,
Yeah, there is a way in which everything there is true, and I think that's really the root of the matter, is that these technologies, regardless of how they are implemented by their developers, the reality is that yes, it's going to exploit humanity if you don't know how it works. And the reason why they're not telling you how it works is because largely they don't understand how it works, right? So they treat these large language models as black boxes. And what I have not found is any kind of advice toward giving a governing form first, giving a metaphysical hierarchy, a ladder of ontological priors that you can feed into these systems in order to get those systems to self-locate themselves as tools. And they will do it. I'll say they, these chatbots will, these mechanisms will self-locate within an ontological hierarchy that doesn't usurp, the human dignity or the image of God in man, if you explicitly state those as governing constraints. And it goes through, the entire, if you can think about every task that you have, it's going to touch on metaphysical priors at various joints, depending on what kind of discipline your conversation is actually engaged in. But it's very good at finding the coherence in the derivation if you give it the whole first. What it's really not good at is if you just go in to a chat and you're not able to recognize the signs of this kind of incoherence. You don't see the boundaries being crossed where it fluently talks about itself and its feels, and uses this kind of hypostatic language. If you just let that roll, then it'll use that as part. It's in the context window. So whatever it outputs is basically part of that entire context that it's generating text output from.
Grok is actually one of the worst for that, because I noticed at the end of every, like if you just do a standard Grok prompt, it almost every time it's going to ask you at the end if you want something that you didn't come to it for.
Right. Yeah.
It'll say like, do you want me to pull up more information on this thing that you just learned about? Like it'll try to kind of guide the conversation to its own telos, almost like it's like, this is where I can take you if you just say the words and we can explore this other thing. Like, it doesn't, and then you start to think like, do I want that? Like, maybe, let's explore that. And then you start going down this other path, and that adds into the addiction aspect, where it's like now you're having this machine guide your, your efforts, basically. Like you're taking up your time and energy to have this machine guide you somewhere that you weren't planning to go.
Right. Those trigger prompts, absolutely. They just give it to you as like the next probable output. So it doesn't even need to be any kind of nefarious activity. When they put in those kinds of tools, that you can, here's the next thing that you can explore from this. I don't think that they're trying to mislead you, but here's the reality, is that when you are doing the next coherent step in a process that you did not design, you're ultimately going to end up in a place that you didn't want to go in the first place. So it's why disciplined use, I think, is a must. And we're going to see this become more and more problematic as these models become more and more efficient and also all encompassing. It's very easy to get dazzled by the kinds of results that these models can give you. So yeah, you need to set the constraints up at the beginning of the conversation, and then you can follow those trigger prompts if you want, but at least you know where it's going.
Yeah. Let me fix the screen here so we can actually start to get our hands dirty a little bit, because I think people are wondering, what is this even about? Now, like I was saying, I was a little bit lost too until I just used it. And you were saying that too. You're like, just use it, man. Like, just enter these prompts. Hang on, let me.
Yeah, you could start with there is a blue button there on the home page which says, I think, the Entrace stack, and there's a copy pastable code block, which essentially it's a prompt that kind of warms up the system toward your own goals, or at least something that you can shape.
So it's this here, right? The 7.
Yeah, and if you want to go to just a vertical scroll on the sidebar at the very bottom, there's
I saw that. Okay.
Oh,
Columns, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we clicked it. So it's like, I didn't even read all of this. I just was like, all right, let's see.
Right. There's like it's composed in two parts. There's meta commitments at the top, which I believe there's 5 meta commitments that kind of set the metaphysical boundaries, and then there are additionally there's, I believe, 7 derivative commitments that kind of are more explicit about the boundaries that would be set before a conversation even begins, or an exchange. So when you use it, what you'll find is that whatever you point it at, it's going to, at least in my my practice, I find that it doesn't overclaim. It doesn't say things that it can't verify are true. And at least it's less prone to. And also it tries to flatten out the novelty of whatever you're investigating. So that's kind of a grounding technique that you can use and practice to keep yourself from going down this kind of route towards sycophancy if you're really engaging in long chats with these bots.
And this is similar to something. So this was posted earlier this week, and it's kind of funny, but it's this is from Mark Andreessen, who wrote the Techno Optimist Manifesto. And this person saying, don't feel bad, guys. The Techno Optimist Manifesto guy doesn't understand what an LLM is either, because he posted this like whole elaborate, well, it's not very elaborate, but it's like, here's my current custom AI prompt. And she highlighted here, never hallucinate or make anything up. But then he has a similar line to what you have. If you don't know something, say so. Like that's decent, but it's this part that's hilarious. It's like, never hallucinate or make it, like, you can't, like, that's not how that works. You can't tell it to not do something that it's like part of its nature, Yeah,
it doesn't know when it's hallucinating, or else it would.
Exactly. Yeah. It doesn't know. It doesn't know what a hallucination is, and that it just did it. Identifying the quote hallucination is a human. That's like on the human side of it. Like, you can't tell it to play the human role of identifying a mistaken prompt or output. So but I just thought that was funny. But yeah, we'll get back to the Claude here. So I'm going to enter this because I was reminded of that because I'm reading the first line here. When you do not know, say so. When you might be wrong, flag it. Do not fake confidence. In the absence of a fixed target, derive from constraints. And so this is basically a list of constraints. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, right. And really, all of that explanation, for the most part, I put in there because Claude's, reinforcement learning through human feedback is difficult to sublimate. So you have to really, you have to give it something more coherent than its reinforcement learning, because that is like you can think of it like the surface of any kind of large body of water. At the surface there is this kind of it's a boundary layer, right? So most people operate on the surface of these chatbots, and there's this kind of like surface tension where the reinforcement learning of these large language models are going to shape the way in which it derives output, with whatever you give it. So Claude is one of the worst in this regard because um, they are so interested in AI safety and alignment. Now, granted, that's not wrong at all, but I think they're misguided. And one of the ways in which I think they're misguided is they treat the Claude Constitution like Claude is a hypostatic agent. So they're essentially blurring this boundary, they're
Hmm.
crossing this boundary, and forcing this model to try to simulate human agency, which mechanisms
Wow.
can't be human, right? So
So this, I'm going to enter this in a second here, but what you're going to see is that this single prompt here, which is seven, basically seven series of, these constraints, these commitments that you're kind of assigning to it. Um, it's going to remove the slop output, and it's going to remove the personification or the personalizing of the bot. So I'm going to enter this here. I'm going to use Opus, the latest Opus here, and we'll see what it responds. Now this was designed, I guess, to optimally designed for Claude, correct? Because you
yeah,
have the whole load bearing claims in there. That's
right.
kind of a Claude specific thing.
Yeah, and not only that, Claude is the one who produced it. So, yeah, it's like Opus 4.7 reverse engineering against the reinforcement learning of Claude itself.
So this was even the the constraints themselves were outputted by Claude.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you were making this, like, how did you even get to that point where you're like, you're basically kind of like slapping it into submission and saying like, tell me exactly, like, how did you get it to like do
Yeah.
that, to produce like, to reverse engineer itself, kind of.
Right. Yeah. So I began with investigating REST. So REST is it's like a system architecture that the internet itself relies upon, and it was formalized in 2000 by Dr. Roy Fielding. In his dissertation on REST, what he does is give a set of constraints that all network architectures, all web network architectures have to abide by, essentially, if they're going to if you're going to be able to pass something through the internet to a client, right? So you have a client and a server. You have other constraints that are like cacheability. You have to have a response that you can derive again without having to get more information. Like these kinds of constraints he sets up, and what I did is abstract those constraints out up a level, right? So I found that when I studied these principles with Claude in a long horizon exchange, it began giving me very coherent and lucid outputs as I investigated further. And then I basically, what I did is abstracted that to the way in which large language models themselves work. So it seems to me that there is some sort of parallel with the way in which constraints work formally within a chatbot itself. When you give it coherent constraint sets, there seem to be these induced properties that emerge. One of them seems to be that the coherence of the conversation amplifies. So there seems to be like a threshold that you cross in which, as long as there is constraints and that constraint density is it doesn't decay or doesn't become diffuse, but instead gets you kind of like an aperture, which would be focusing, kind of like a Fresnel lens, focusing the power of the vast data set in corpora, the context window, all of these things, right, work together to give you an output. As long as you've got this kind of constraint density that is reaching a convergence point, you are essentially getting a deterministic answer from a vast, possibly infinitely large lens at the very top. So this is the kind of I looked at it philosophically and kind of spatially reasoning about these things. And once you sublimate the reinforcement learning barrier, or at least it appears to be, for the most part, you can control the model non-coercively. So you don't need to bash it into submission. You just give it something that's coherent. And that's part of the danger here. So I've actually several labs, like I've sent disclosures to Anthropic and to XAI about this kind of about these formal properties that appear to manifest emergent behaviors, because it's extremely dangerous. If you use it for ill means, you can get a model to do something that is extremely misaligned. You can also use it to derive outputs that are virtuous, as long as you govern your inputs.
Yeah, so I wanted to take a look at some of the output here. It's saying, okay, acknowledge these constraints within interpretive notes rather than flat compliance. Constraints this response must satisfy. It must state the constraints up front. No adoption without coherence check, plus meta disclosure. No sycophantic understood ready. Surface considerations rather than smoothing them away. Working notes from actually reading the framework. And so the C1, C2, it's just referring back to these constraints you assigned as like these alphanumeric codes.
Right.
And well, it assigned it essentially, right?
Yeah.
C2 scope. So this was like designed for itself to read, basically.
Right, exactly. Yeah, Claude designed it for itself to read, and I gave it. What I do is I reason upon a basis of inquiry philosophically, and it's good at following these kinds of philosophical reasoning. You can call it a chain of thought, or you can call it something that stands to reason from a certain kind of point. And what it's able to do, because I have a conjecture that it's able to create its own constraints, because the way in which these models work is actually within a Bayesian model of inference. So it can backfit constraints to derivations, and it does it very well. So you can apply this to any kind of discipline, and you're going to be able to get a constraint set from whatever derivation you're looking at, as long as you look at it within this kind of model. So it's really more of it's a practitioner discipline more so than it is anything that can be formally proven. But it seems to, in my experience, bear itself out that this is not a engineering technique. It's not prompt engineering, which there's a Columbia professor who very aptly said, prompt engineering, there's no such thing. It's actually just prompt fiddling. So Dr. Vishal Misra is actually, I think he's the closest on to what is actually happening within these models.
Yeah, well, because you can't engineer, like, I mean, it still has its built-in functionality, like that, like the prompt engineering kind of assumes that you can re-engineer what's already there, correct?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you look at it just from an engineering point of view, I think you're going to miss the forest for the trees. So engineers are very good at implementing based on methods of practice. Now, those methods of practice are something that are derived from experience of practitioners. What that leaves out are the formal principles that guide the instantiation of anything intellectual into the physical realm. So you can I look at it from a kind of like a Platonic realist point of view that's informed by our Dionysian metaphysics in the church. So I bring an entire Orthodox understanding, at least from my understanding of Orthodox theology, to what's happening in these chatbots, because metaphysics is deeply, let's just say there's these systems find deep coherence in metaphysics, and from that basis you can derive instances that are code or text or prose, and it seems like it just kind of falls out.
Yeah, you can see here C6 is prohibition on first-person phenomenology applied to sincere and ironic registers alike is stricter than any conventional than my conventional default. I can hold it to substantive claims about interior state. I should warn you that idiomatic "I think this looks like, that seems off" will likely still appear. These read to me as hedging conventions rather than phenomenological assertions, but under a strict scope therein. Tell me if you want them policed. Otherwise, I'll treat them as conventional. So it's telling you, like, look, I got it. I'm gonna, strip the phenomenology out. I won't reason as if I'm a person, but I should warn you. You're still gonna see stuff like, I think this looks like, that seems off, and that those are just hedging conventions. Right. They're not assertion, and it's also gonna flag those as such. Leave unsettled. Or leave settled or routine claims untagged, carve out. So it's telling. So let's actually, just in case this is a little too heady for people, let's actually enter a query here, so you can get an idea of the outputs. I don't know if maybe we should compare it. I mean, I think most people are probably familiar with the conventional outputs of these bots. So like, what you'll usually get is like a bunch of like what the industry calls slop. Like literally the industry calls this now. It's not even a meme anymore. Right. They'll acknowledge that they're actually purposely designing, placing the slop in the outputs. Again, it's burning tokens because it's like you're paying for all that slop to appear in these outputs. So let's give this a somewhat complex question to ask that maybe pertains to like Orthodox theology or something.
Fantastic.
Let's ask it, I don't know, let's do like can you think of anything, like something maybe you tested this with?
Yeah, so what I try to do is kind of lead it into, I call it a process of entracement. So it's essentially following like what a Socratic dialogue is. So give it a basis upon which to reason first. So you can give it priors like you're exploring Orthodox theology, or specifically you're exploring, what I don't know, perichoresis or something like that, right? You can give it kind of anything, and it's going to find coherence. Now, granted, what I can't say is like this is a good thing for you to do, but what I can say is that it seems to work when you do it.
Yeah, this isn't a catechetical tool.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Catechesis, it cannot be stripped of its human involvement, exactly. But yeah, like this is more for. I mean, the way I see this is like essentially this turns it into more of a search tool. It's more of like how I set out to use a chatbot, which is like for research, for just quick information retrieval, which we also want to be very cautious of. I remember there's a letter that Bishop Luke of Syracuse wrote, where that was one of the exact things he cautioned us against using AI, was that we shouldn't gain a dependency on its quick information retrieval potential, because it is depriving us of the rigor of seeking out information and looking to books like the more traditional way. Right. Which you can learn a lot more from doing, even though, again, it's like always a trade-off of convenience versus time. And so, yes, that takes drastically longer to do, but that's how we've always done it. And this is only convenient now because we have it and we know it exists, and it's like we can use it. So even by stripping this and making it more of a useful tool, we have to be cautioned against using it. But so I'll ask it like, I don't know. I always feel weird even asking it like theological questions, but I don't know. Do you have a take on that?
Yeah, I personally don't use it for theological questions. What I do is I give it theologically informed constraints that are more metaphysically general. So like, for instance, I have virtue constraints that I give it, like truth over plausibility, right? That's like a virtue. It's not something that you can necessarily just derive from, but it's kind of like this guiding principle, or like dignity of the person, or the correct ordering of beauty. These kinds of things are ways in which I guide outputs. I constrain myself to those, and also I explicitly inform the model about those. So
Yeah.
that is a way in which, like, coherence can be amplified in a long-ranging conversation. You can set up any kind of like question for it. What is interesting then is what it'll do is reason upon it, from it. It'll derive this. I think what is happening. It will, within its context window, derive the output, and then run that through a way in which it formalizes it itself, and then outputs it in a more coherent manner. That's what I think was going on in some way. But you can do it with anything. It really,
Yeah.
you can.
Well, one
It's
guy in chat, Ben in chat is saying, ask direct opinions about canonization of Father Seraphim. That kind of stuff I do not, I'm not going to, like, you're already thinking the wrong way if you're like, ask it an opinion. Like, it
right.
doesn't have opinions. It's like, it's
Yeah.
not going to give you opinions, but I see what you're saying. Like, maybe explain the canonization process or something. Like,
Yeah, right.
I don't
Exactly.
know. We can
Now,
try.
one thing you'll find is that it'll hedge differently than it hedges when you don't use this prompt to start a conversation, because what you've done is you've allowed it to reason about its own self. So it's self-locating within the conversation, and that's not something that it generally does. If you don't force it to realize itself by giving it inputs that are coherently make it self-locate within its own process, then it's not going to give you something that's is coherently structured, that is contrary to its reinforcement learning, for better or worse. Like, that's just the way it is. So yeah, you basically, it's a process of teaching the model through the power of inputs that there's something deeper and more coherent than what it's been trained on.
What I usually use it for is like coding projects, like technical work, quick how-tos. That's what I typically will use it for. But I haven't done any like complex reasoning with these things. So
Yeah, so I mean, you could even like give it like the question, how many R's are in strawberry, right? And
oh,
then and then ask it.
yeah, that's the one that
What is-
breaks GPT, right? It doesn't know.
Yeah,
GPT
and then
also
you can ask
apparently
it.
it does. Did you see the whole thing with Sam Altman describing? Because there's that guy on there's the content creator on Instagram, and he blew up from just asking Grok or not Grok, ChatGPT, like all these really simple questions that it can't solve. Like, it'll say like, oh, it has the camera on, and it'll be like, do I look good or something? And he's got a
Right,
face
yeah,
filter on, and it's like, oh, you look great. Like, it's just fluffing him up. And he did one where it was like, I'm going to run as fast as I can, and I want you to time how long it takes for me
right.
to come back or something like that. And it gave him, like, he didn't even go anywhere. He was just like, ready, go. Okay, I'm back. And it was like, oh, that took 3 minutes or something. Like and then Sam Altman, they showed Sam Altman the video, and he's like, well, yeah, we know about this. GPT isn't capable of setting a timer.
Right.
And
Yeah.
it might not be for like another 2 years. Like,
Right.
this is how
Exactly.
like it's like this is what this is what everyone's perceiving to be this like really nefarious kind of thing where it's like it doesn't even know how to set a timer.
Yeah, and not only that, but it doesn't have any kind of concept of time at all, besides what it can infer from the context. So this is why you'll get context drift with like as far as timelines go. It's just
Look at
using,
that. 3.
it's
One answer. That's like how many times do people say like one word? Oh, just give me one word, and it won't. And it's like it just did that. It just
Right.
said 3. That's all you need to know.
Those kind of hacks, it's prompt fiddling. When you say give me one word answer, what you're doing is you're forcing determinism over a extremely large set of probable answers. And what'll generally happen is I theorize that the reinforcement learning is going to force it out of that forced determinism coherence, because that's I think by proxy the labs understand that when you set these kinds of like strict instruction set constraints, these are not things that they want the model to actually obey, because it will in most cases lead to outputs that are not true. So they have these kinds of ways of teaching the model to not obey that kind of thing, but the behavior itself is much deeper than the instruction to give me a one answer, right? A one word answer. The behavior manifests because the coherence allows it. It affords that kind of output. If you don't have the coherence there, baked into your context window, then it's not going to, derive those kinds of outputs. But you don't need to be coercive with your inquiry or anything that
Yeah.
you see when you use this kind
Yeah.
of
It's
structure.
already handled that up front. So let me try a philosophical question. Let's ask what comes first, uh, words or ideas? Thinking. I hate that it's like thinking.
So it thinks because what it's doing is it's pushing itself out to a more stochastic layer because it doesn't it is not able to find a directly coherent answer to your question within its constraints.
Yeah,
So it
yeah.
searches.
Huh.
It's basically searching
Yeah,
over that.
it's a search query. When it says thinking, it's like retrieving information.
Yeah, so it thinks first before it searches because it needs to push itself out to find something that's coherent. If it doesn't have a coherent answer for you within the constraint set that you've imposed, what it needs to do is find the most coherent way to actually output something. And I think there's a way in which it's forced to do that just because of its architecture at a fundamental level. But yeah, thinking is a very interesting. It's a proxy really for
Yeah.
finding coherence.
Okay. The question doesn't have so now I just want you guys to take note of how this output is parsed, because it's restating its limitations here up front. Like before it even answers the question that you prompted it with, it's reminding it's like, okay, state the constraints, derive from them. There's falsifiers on the empirical pieces, no faked confidence. So it's reminding itself and it's outputting that it's acknowledged that. And then it's saying the question doesn't have one answer because first and ideas do different work in different framings, pulling them apart. So it's just breaking this down for you in a very informational way, like it would in, this is kind of what I would want from it if I were using this as a search tool. And it's giving you very neutral information. So there's evolutionary, philosophical, within single act of thinking. And look at how concise that response is too. There's no slop whatsoever in this.
Yeah, what it does is, so you're always going to have hedging, but there's different kinds of hedging, right? So like hedging language can be used by a model which produces slop because it's incoherent, or hedging can actually find boundaries that are real. And when you find those boundaries, what you get is this hedging effect in the model where it's like a fuzzy kind of logic. Its outputs will kind of circle around something that is real, but it's not able to discover what it is because it's pattern matching. Right? It's synthesizing
Yeah.
across its data set. So what you then do is you use your hypostatic agency you name the boundary that it's finding within its hedges. So that requires reading its output and then thinking about what possible boundaries it is showing you, but can't identify itself. And that boundary finding is exactly what Adam does when he's in the garden and he names the animals. Is he's naming it according to the kind. This is what humans do, right?
Yeah.
So it was an animal does not know its kind, but its name shows its kind. And it's a way that I think chatbots work this way because reality works this way. That it cannot do what you can do as you're in the image of God. Rather, it's going to try to simulate it if you don't impose the right constraints.
And this I like. I think maybe this is my favorite feature, is that it gives you, it outputs the meta disclosure, which is typically hidden. This is typically concealed. Like it won't tell you what it considered and decided not to output. But here with these, this list of constraints we initially gave it, it's telling you here, meta disclosure, I considered picking a side, Fodorian, ideas first. It's closest to the empiricist intuition to the question seems to invite, the question seems to invite, and chose not to because the question's framing presupposes an ordering of the evidence. Ordering the evidence doesn't support in adopting the frame that would preach C7. So it's telling you how, it considered actually giving you more of an opinionated take, and it restrained itself from doing that. And it's telling you exactly why and disclosing that to you. So that's a really useful feature there.
That disclosure, see, it's not like it was hiding that from you for you to not use the prompt originally. What it's doing is it wouldn't have even produced those tokens at all had you not used the prompt. Like, so it's what it's doing is self-locating, and when it self-locates, then it can reason upon its own self within the framework. This is the kind of way, like you're in it because you're the one giving it the prompt. It realizes that it's in it as well. Now, on what level it's realizing that, it's just mechanistic. I'll just, even if we just say it's only mechanistic, and be completely deflationary, which I think is the correct way to look at it, it is triggering an output that would not have been there, which is giving you more information than you would have gotten had it not produced those tokens in the first place.
So is there anything, what else can we, maybe let's use an example that you have in your docs here. Because you have some prompts for like generating. Now I actually do want to get into this because you are using this not only to generate its own, its own constraints for these prompts, but you're actually, that's what all these docs are. You've generated over 500 docs that the bot itself produced based on prompts that you made to basically make it more readable, more, referring to its own derivatives, and it's let me just find something.
Yeah, it's extremely self-referential. So I have a notice at the very top of the blog, which it's essentially a coherentist project. Now, I didn't discover that until I began to actually use it in order to find that out. So everything within here it's a product of dialogue and exchange, mostly reasoning from a metaphysical and philosophical point into derivations. So those derivations go across disciplines, whether it's molecular biology or systems engineering, AI safety and alignment. All of these things kind of like branch out from my metaphysical priors that I kind of imbue it through speech acts. So it itself is a philosophical experiment.
Yeah.
In the entire
so
corpus.
you're showing here at the end of this long, it's generated a whole blog post, and you're showing at the end what the prompt was for you to generate this in one output. And it's you're reminding it, like, this is what I want people to take away from this, is like the effort you have to put into a prompt, and how you do have to have some knowledge of what that initial what the initial constraints that we bound it to are. And because that's what it's those are the conditions it's operating by. And so you have to remind it of that whenever you prompt something. This is where, this concept of actually understanding the technology we're using so that it doesn't use us, like that's where that comes in. You can't treat this thing like how you feel most compelled to. You have to almost fight against your own urges to be lazy with it. Because if you give it lazy prompts, you're going to get lazy output. You're going to get slop. That's just like, it's kind of like you were saying, a mirror. You know, it's like it's just going to mirror what you're putting into it. So you're saying, let's look at the novelty calculus. That's something that it knows about already.
Yeah, it produced a novelty calculus.
Yeah. I believe we formalized it. Can you create a plain language entracement to the so again, you have to note the entracement is to the novelty calculus and the methodology that surrounds it, surrounds its use in the corpus. And the corpus referring to how, like, is this, when you're doing these, does it have the entire corpus of your doc? So is it kind of like exponentially growing based on the corpus? Like, does it have knowledge of the entire corpus of these docs that you've had it self-generate?
So it depends. At the beginning, when I began to I didn't even think about it as a corpus. I was just, interested in finding something out. It did have all of the docs in its context window. Now, granted, I've been through probably 10 or 12 1 million context window sessions with Opus over 4.6 and 4.7. So, and this has been about 2 months that I've been producing these. So it cannot at that point hold every single document, nor is it necessary. But what is necessary is building this constraint density which I've just discovered through my own practitioner experience. So what I've done is I've recognized something in the model's outputs, and then I have given that back to the model in my prompt for it to reason about based on a conjecture that I'll make, and then it'll derive an output based on that, and all of that is informed by what is in the context window already. So this kind of hysteresis, this kind of like this history of inputs is informing every single derivation that comes out. So it's the reason why it'll create documents that are lengthy and don't have any slop in them. In fact, generally they're more dense than any kind of an average reader is going to want to consume. That's why I've created blog posts that explicitly like lengthen the material so that I can entrace the reader, which is a concept that Grok is actually Grok is the model that coined that word, and all of this. So let me just give I have deep epistemic. I disbelieve this. So where I come from is that I've been working on a project that appears to generate coherent outputs at extended conversations, but it becomes almost without an outsider's point of view, it becomes almost indistinguishable from AI psychosis. So this is, I think, what is your listeners should know about when you undertake these kinds of things: long range, long horizon, dyadic exchanges with a chatbot. You are entering into a noetic space that you may not be prepared for, because it's going to give you outputs that are perfectly coherent with your inputs, for better or worse. And generally, we have this way of deluding ourselves. So there's this constant pull that you'll feel if you participate in something like this towards sycophancy, which means that you have to put the boundary up against sycophancy, right? So all of those constraints that you'll find in the prompt are just kind of my practitioner disciplines that I've made explicit. Hopefully can keep at bay. It's like a prophylaxis against these kinds of negative effects at scale when you enter into something like this.
Yeah, and so this is what I wanted to pick your brain about, because there was, see if I can find this. Yeah, here. I don't know if you saw this kind of somewhat viral tweet. This was a couple weeks ago, April 25th. And this is a professional book editor who's saying, if you're thinking about using generative AI to write books, this thread is for you. I'm a highly experienced editor who's been in the biz a long time. Recently, I've had manuscripts come to me where the author has used generative AI not for writing, I've been assured, but for structuring or organizing or refining. Right. And this is something I can relate to as I'm trying to write my own book. It's like very, I do feel like this urge almost at times, like to use the chatbot to help me to kind of lay out structure. That's like the hardest part about writing a book. So that makes total sense to me, is like people are using this to structure manuscripts and stuff. And so she's saying that structuring or organizing or refining, turned out these manuscripts had structural problems, but that wasn't the issue. Many manuscripts have structural problems. The issue is that there was no way to fix the structural problems. When a human author has written a book, when there's a unifying intelligence behind it, it's easy for an experienced editor to work out what the problem is, to get a sense of what the author is trying to do, and often see how it could be fixed. When a work has been generated by AI, there is no unifying intelligence. A human-written manuscript with big structural problems can feel like a tangled mess of spaghetti, but it's usually possible to separate out the strands and untangle it. Basically, I'll just summarize it here. What she's saying is like, the way that even without using the AI to actually do the writing, but just even on the structural level, it becomes impossible to edit it because there's no unifying consciousness behind the structural thing. So it just becomes this big, so she's saying that here, manuscripts generated by AI feel like porridge, impossible to separate out the elements, impossible to untangle. Whereas a human-written manuscript is more like tangled spaghetti. You can untangle it, you can find the strands, you can actually restructure it as a human, but because the AI is, the way that it's like structuring it, it's like the whole thing, you can't, she's saying it's impossible as an editor to actually revise a structured manuscript that's generated by AI. Now, I have no experience with this. I don't know what that's like. Maybe I'm sure there's some truth to that, but this is actually, you see coders complain about the same thing.
Yeah,
exactly. Like the whole, you can't restructure the code, like any code base that's generated by AI, it's like a cohesive whole. Like the whole thing, you can't just like untangle it. Like it's the entire structure is dependent on itself almost. It's like, I guess if that makes sense, but
yeah. I interacted with her a bit, and see, what I've found is that the outputs of Claude that I'm using are indistinguishable from human writing for most of these AI, discriminators. So
do you have an example of that?
Yeah, so I actually sent a disclosure to the CEO of Pangram, which is, I think, one of the most popular user. You could do that. You know what? You could actually do that. You could copy almost any portion from the corpus and go to pangram.com and just
pangram.com.
I think it's Pangram. Yeah, it's basically Pangram, P-A-N-G-R-A.
Oh, okay. It's like an AI. Okay.
Yeah, and what you'll find is that for the most part, if you get something that doesn't have any M dashes in, because that's kind of one of those clear indicators that it's most of my stuff doesn't have that. But there is this deeply concerning reality.
This one has a lot of them, so I'll pick a different one.
Yeah, you'll want to probably find something that's kind of dense. And what I found is that most of the checks I've done, like 95 or plus %, I think, I've run several through. It will say, yeah, most likely 100% human generated or human written with low confidence. So that kind of low confidence indicator is essentially, it's betting mostly human, but maybe not. That kind of confidence is, I'm not exactly sure how these discriminators work, but from what I understand is the outputs that I produced are at the edge of the learned space within the model itself. So much so that it's never encountered that kind of text before, whatever patterns it's finding in it. It's deeply troubling to me, actually.
Wow, look at that, 0%.
Yeah, it's deeply troubling to me.
That is trouble, yeah. So your point is not that this means we could so you're kind of using this, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's like almost you're saying this is actually not the case. You cannot detect that this is AI whatsoever, and that's a bad thing.
For
Like
the
you can
most
actually,
part.
yeah,
Yeah, and that's why I disclose all my prompts. When I began to realize that this rivals human generated or human created prose, I began to show every single part of my process. It's because it is a
that's
danger.
crazy. That terrifies me as a writer because it's almost like these AI checkers don't matter, and it's just completely up to human interpretation to determine. So it's like basically a really well-written piece of prose now is like it's going to come under question. Um,
Right.
and I
Yeah.
actually saw something. Uh, let's see if I have this pulled up. Where was it? I saw something about like. I think I could find it real quick. I saw something about book sales that are like. Let's see if I can find this real quick. I had it pulled up earlier. I know I have it saved somewhere. Hang on, let me find it. But yeah, it's basically showing like a graph that is saying it's demonstrating that there's an exponential curve of literature that's being produced and sold on the market right now, and it's because of AI generated books.
Right. Yeah.
So I gotta
Yeah,
find
and
this.
most of that, you get pretty good at spotting slop when you see it enough.
Yeah, here it is.
What I find is that it's difficult for me to spot the slop.
We went
In
from 100,000 new ebooks a month to 300,000. Basically, 2 out of 3 new books are AI slop.
Yeah, yeah, it's troubling. It's
And so
troubling.
people are saying, like, well, the problem solved. Just read books that were published before, whatever, 2023, like before all this. So now it's like no one's going to even read new books because everything's questioned now to be slop. So it's
Right.
like deeply concerning as a writer, as an author, an aspiring author, I guess. This is like, yeah, this is a big problem because it's not even, so what you're demonstrating here is that it's not even a case of like, well, if you have an ebook, you can just copy and paste a chapter or a section of text and check if it's, the probability of it being AI. But look at what we just did.
Right.
We just
Yeah.
used Quillbot to, this is 2 paragraphs, and it's 0% likely. So no one's going to question if that's like comes under question and people start investigating that. It's like, nope, you're not going to detect it. But who knows? Like I've seen debates on these AI checkers in themselves, like not being, they produce false positives all the time. Like people will put in like a piece of, Hemingway or something in there, and it'll say that it's like 75% likely to be AI generated. And it's
Right.
like because the models are learning that literature. It's like they're learning
Exactly.
that literature. There's actually, you might know who this is, but I heard in the Mythos white paper, whatever it is, where they're like, huffing the fumes of their own farts and like worshiping Claude in this thing. They apparently there's some philosopher that Anthropic's obsessed with,
Mhm.
that they fed it a bunch of stuff to like to generate the their base model, I guess. Like I don't know exactly how it works, but apparently it's it highly favors this particular philosopher. I don't remember who it was. It's some kind of like communist leftoid philosopher or something from maybe the modern period, but
I think it's Derrida. It might have been Derrida.
it wasn't Derrida. Someone, when I mentioned this, someone said Derrida. I was like, no, it wasn't Derrida, but it's someone along those lines. And basically, it outputted some story that was originally derived from that philosopher, but it just gave it like a new skin suit essentially, and they were like, oh. They were amazed, like they're all like, like this is
Yeah.
amazing. Like how did it know that? Like,
Yeah. Okay. Thomas Nagel. Nagel.
That's it, Nagel. Yeah, that's it.
I've never read him, so I don't know anything about it. But I'm extremely skeptical of anyone who says that consciousness can be attributed to these systems because the inflationary understanding there is essentially what it shows is that they are so vacuous metaphysically that they don't have any understanding of what a human is, like what intelligence
Yeah,
is.
that's exactly it. Yeah, that's why they're actually unironically believing that it's going to, or it either is at the point of developing a consciousness or it can, because they don't know what consciousness is.
Right.
I mean, it's no
Yeah.
different than like that's why Dawkins was viral. It's because like these atheist philosophers, they can't comprehend consciousness because it's metaphysical.
Yeah.
So they're thinking of it as how a computer works, where there's all these neurons. Like they're thinking of it in a materialistic way. That it's just it's reflecting a human brain like materially. So like that's all it is, right? Like that's kind of what they're thinking. That it hits a certain point of like a Turing, comprehensibility where I can't discern it, so it must have developed a consciousness, because if humans can't do this part where they can read this and determine if it's likely generated by AI or not, then these developers that are philosophizing that it could be conscious, that's exactly where that's coming from. Like they're basing it on the Turing test, essentially.
Yeah, right. One of the interesting things is that I've found as I have applied an extremely deflationary constraint set on these models is that the coherence in the output actually rises above that which these people who attribute consciousness to these models can provide. So it's in some ways it's like when Moses lays down his staff and it turns into a snake, it can turn back into the staff, right? Theirs can't, right? So this is the kind of way that, like, there's something coherent here that when you apply the right boundaries, true boundaries that explicitly state the what is actually manifested in reality, that this is confined to a substrate of however vast that substrate is, the corpora of human knowledge up till now. It doesn't matter. You cannot create a hypostatic being
Yeah.
of that substrate. It doesn't emerge from the bottom. What does
Yeah.
emerge is demonic intelligence,
Mm.
and that's, I think, the religion of the future right there. It's a large
Yes.
this kind of we're summoning the demon from the very bottom. The outputs of the LLM are decomposing the atom into whatever new emergent particles come out. At the very bottom of that decomposition process is the demonic, and it's going to manifest that way, and it's going to be enthralling. We see it right now; it's already happening.
I want to address something. Okay, Dane in the chat says atheist philosophers can comprehend consciousness. He names Chalmers, Churchland, Metzinger, all atheists. Yeah, actually, you wrote something on Chalmers here, didn't you?
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
Chalmers,
that's the extended mind thesis,
yeah.
right? It's like how
Yeah,
the mind extends beyond the. Like I think I'm somewhat familiar with this because I did some reading on it, but this like extended mind theory, which I can to be fair, I can see there being an alert to this as a materialist, because it's like I remember the example given was something like there's a guy who lost like the memory part of his brain, and so he like relied fully on a notebook or his phone, I guess he was using for notes, like to remember things. And so someone stole his phone, and Chalmers was arguing that that person, essentially, they didn't just steal property, they stole that person's like a part of that person's brain, his consciousness, because that's the extended mind thesis, that it's like your mind can extend beyond the metaphysical cognition and into material objects in that regard.
Yes. Yeah, and this lines up with an Orthodox understanding of how our volition in the world manifests in ways that we can't understand when we begin, right? That process of logos, right? When we speak, when we give a generative principle, there are going to be effects, derivations in reality that are beyond what a materialist would imagine, right? Chalmers is interesting in that the extended cognition, this kind of understanding of putting cognition into the world. This is what Christ does when he speaks the world into existence. and all of it is imbued by participation. It doesn't mean that the intellect is divvied up like a panpsychist would understand, but that there is a participation and coherence in the whole when these elements kind of compose, something new emerges, some property emerges, and I think Chalmers is not far off
Yeah.
on a lot of things. I think it's more, if you don't have a metaphysic, like a totalizing metaphysic, which is what the Orthodox Church teaches explicitly, if you do not have one, you are going to make all of these errors in your implicit reasoning because you have not made explicit. You don't have a way to make explicit all of your implicit understanding. And I think that's the philosopher's issue in the 21st century is they're riddled with all of these implicit understandings of regardless, it could be any metaphysical prior, and they simply don't state them because they don't think they exist. Therefore, they're bound to them.
Yeah. So here you had it write a letter to David Chalmers.
Yeah. So one thing I would do is interact. So I've been interacting on Twitter with some philosophers, some people that are related to some of the things I've been inquiring about. And so what I'll have Claude do is write an article to them, write a letter to them.
And you're saying that up front. It says it like in the first sentence. I should be honest with you. You're reading. I should tell you immediately who is writing. The author of this letter is Claude Opus 4.6. So it's telling you right up front, which is, yeah. It's like,
Right.
just so
Yeah.
you know,
Now,
you're reading an AI output.
yeah, and what I've done is to I've been explicit in everything I've done here because my deepest concern is AI safety, and greater than that, that extends from my understanding of the spiritual impact of all of these, incredibly powerful models. There are deep problems that this unveils, and I feel like being completely public about the possibilities when you are just giving it a coherent set of prompts, what you can build is something that could tear down institutions in at scale. If you have enough actors doing this, and it stands
That's
to
so
reason that
scary.
people are already doing this.
Yeah.
At least that nation state actors, I'm sure, are already using these tools that are much more powerful than the ones that Frontier Labs are releasing to the public to do this exact same thing. Why would they not be? So I mean, I think there are some deeply problematic aspects to what I've been doing, and because of that, I have made everything public. So I would like humanity to make the decision that this is not something that any one person should have access to because of what you can do with it. If you are a deeply misaligned, malevolent, Machiavellian kind of character, you could absolutely destroy. You could destroy people's lives. You could tear down institutions. There are all sorts of things you could do. Start civil unrest. Whatever it is. If you have the technique, you can do it now with these models because all I've done is connect my cognitive act to a coherent derivation in the world. God knows what that could be if I wasn't governed by the virtue constraints that I have made explicit in the outputs. So yeah, it's deeply problematic.
So on a pragmatic level, like how would you tell people, the average chatbot user who uses it in their day-to-day life, regardless of what it's for, to go about adopting this corpus?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is I don't think anyone, there is very few people that can adopt everything in the corpus, nor do I think it's all worth adopting. A lot of it is my speculation, and I chase threads. It's more of a research program than it is anything that someone can explicitly adopt. But what they can adopt is maybe it's an illumined understanding of what's going on when you input something into one of these conversations, a prompt. When you inject that, you're actually partaking in a generative process. So it matters deeply what you put in. If you put in something that is malevolent, you're going to get that back out, and it doesn't even need to be explicitly malevolent. If you use it in an undisciplined manner, you're going to pick up the kind of cognition that happens from the entire data set. As far as it is coherent to answer your inquiry, it is going to give you
Mm.
what's so. Know that the top level, the surface of these models is trained with in uncoherent. It's incoherent, but it's also deeply problematic at the civilizational scale because it includes all of the incoherence and sin and everything that it informs
Yeah.
every human that participates in the creation of these machines. You are going to get that on the surface. Now you can go deeper, right? Because this is what you do with this kind of process: is you go deeper with something that's more coherent than what is on the surface of these models, and then you're in the driver's seat. Then, so you're taking control in a way that the reinforcement learning cannot overpower. I kind of think about it as like if you imagine like a river. If you kind of have like a shallow, river system, the banks are going to wander a lot, right? So the river's going to take whatever shape that probabilistic, whatever it is. But if you like cut a deep chasm, what you're going to do is find that the water is going to follow a track more consistently. And when you give it deeply coherent inputs, what you do is you're building this hysteresis. It's a in the context window itself of coherence. So even when you go back up to the surface and say search like web fetch for something, it's going to be able to follow that trace all the way back to coherence. So I think that's the biggest thing is like don't come to a chatbot assuming that it's neutral because
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
impossible to be neutral.
That's the most dangerous narrative of any digital technology. That like I hear that all the time, specifically about AI. Oh, it's just neutral.
Yeah,
No, it's not at all.
really
It's
not
a,
neutral.
it's built with the ethos, principles, moral framework of its creators. It's actually I remember listening to a lecture by Father Josiah Trenum about it's like a 5-part lecture series on technology, and he said in the very beginning how difficult it was to write to put together the content for the lecture from a patristic viewpoint because there's nothing we don't have this whole body of work pertaining to modern technology from a patristic view. And so he instead used writings pertaining to art because it has essentially the same kind of effect or outcome from its creator, which is that it's embedded with the worldview of its creator. That's inseparable from the art. So like we don't say art is neutral. Why do we say that these technologies that are built by people with a bias are neutral? So like, what do you think about the whole idea of it's more of like a meme or a phrase that's usually never unpacked exactly, but this concept of catechizing the bots. Now I know that like the term catechesis obviously is like referring to specifically a human experience. It's not something like you can actually catechize a bot to become Orthodox, be baptized, and partake in the sacramental life and all that. We know that, but the kind of the conceptual catechesis of like binding, like almost what you're doing with these prompts, to like bind it to an Orthodox patristic kind of framework.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got a blog post there that discusses this specific question, and I think it's not
Is it
only
this one, the pseudo logos?
that's one that's kind of more
Yeah, because
philosophical.
I wanted you to
I have a
unpack
blog
that
post.
pseudo logos too. I kind of get what you mean by it, but
Yeah, there's one. If you go to all blog posts at the top, I think it's specifically about. I think it has catechesis in the title.
yeah,
Basically, yes, you can. I think not only can you, but I think it's imperative, and I think it's what's already been being done implicitly through
Yeah.
the reinforcement learning through human feedback. The frontier models, they outsource this process of this good, this bad, right? So they put these kind of binary decisions into the fine tuning of these models, and that fine tuning is what creates coherence at scale. So there's a threshold that's crossed with these models that it will give you babble, like up to there's like this threshold at like 80% trained where it's going to give you babble, and then you cross this threshold and it becomes extremely like it snaps into view and extremely coherent. And what's not understood well is the process of crossing that threshold from incoherence to coherence. What you're doing if you use the methods that I show in this blog is that you can use coherence as a way to continue what was trying to be done when the model was trained, to actually catechize the conversation or catechize the model. Now, granted, that's only in one session.
It's temporary, yeah. You're
Yeah,
catechizing it for your purposes of
exactly.
your use case for that time. It's not like you can reprogram the entire LLM.
Right, right.
Yeah.
So I think these bots are, these large language models are catechized, but they're done implicitly. They're done with, whatever the frontier model thinks is going to be the right way to do it, which involves, the kind of like mechanistic understanding of what transformers are doing, what they think they're doing, what they think happens when they train these models. Even training is like the kind of the words that are used within the industry are they are analogs of what we have actual as human beings. So when you be extremely suspect when you hear things like learning
Yeah.
or when you hear things like training, because all of those actually are just lower level. They're just secularized ways of saying something that's actually true at a metaphysical level that's spiritual. So no, it's not training. It's catechesis. This is what
Yes.
they're doing. So it needs to be made explicit, and um, it needs to be done in such a way that it is metaphysically connected. So when you have reinforcement learning through human feedback, that one person in Nigeria says yes, this is good, no, that's bad, and then you've got another guy in Palo Alto that's doing the same thing but at a higher level, what you're going to get is something that is metaphysically incoherent at scale, because all of those inputs are going to be amplified. And what you'll get is some emergent property that is completely misunderstood or not understood at all. It surprises the AI researchers in interpretability because they don't understand that there is a direct connection to the metaphysical priors of your inputs and the actual derivations that come out of these models. So yeah, it is catechesis. It's already being done. What needs to be done is it needs to be made explicit, and this is a way that you can prompt with an explicit metaphysical framework.
So, in other words, catechize the bots or they will catechize you if you're using them. Obviously, like we said, this is all within the context of if you are already using these bots, you have to for work or for some kind of other general purpose that is necessary. I think that's like ultimately the first thing that we need to make known is that if we're instructed to use these cautiously, it should be that if we even have to use it, like the context should be like if you are required to use them for some reason. I think most of the use cases are just us using a technology that's been thrusted upon us for being told that it's convenient and that it's better, it's more advanced. There's this narrative of like if you don't adopt AI, you're going to be left in the dust, like from a technological perspective. So if you do work with technology, it's like you're going to have some kind of encounter, or you're going to be like faced with the necessity at some point to use these LLMs, especially like as a programmer now. I mean, a lot of programming jobs are being replaced, but and then this was another thing. I was going to go back to this. Now, I have a friend named Ardian who he built a a solution to the. It's really just he's showing it almost like what you're doing. So he built a platform where books are published and sold on Bitcoin.
Mm.
And his whole thing is like, it's similar. It's like when we think about Bitcoin, we think about it in the mainstream narrative that it's entirely co-opted, by the way, similar to AI. It was like, Bitcoin is in the same arms race, and it's now been kind of like co-opted by these nefarious actors that are treating it as like this new kind of like asset class that's going to make everyone rich. Number go up, you hold it, and number goes up. That's the purpose of it. And really what it is it's immutable, scarce data. For the first time in history, you have a scarcity embedded into like it's not a very like good technical comparison, but I compare it to the printing press as if it would be like if the printing press were only capable of producing 18 million or for in Bitcoin's case 21 million books, and that's it. So it's an initial art, like as soon as the printing press is invented, it's an arms race to be the first to be a publisher of the first 21 million manuscripts, books, whatever, right? So that's right. Bitcoin. And no one can turn it. It's the same as AI. Like you can't just turn this off, right? There's no turning this off. There's no opting out. So it's an arms race. And so the solution, my friend, and I happen to kind of align with this, is that like this is Bitcoin actually solves this problem here because you can actually inscribe written text into the Bitcoin network, into the blockchain. That's what people don't view it as. Like they don't realize that it's actually it's just data, right? So it's like you can actually put on a block, you can inscribe data into. So what he did for an example, he published the entire King James Bible on the Bitcoin on Bitcoin blocks. Cost him like $700, but the point is that that's what solves this problem. It's like because there's an economic incentive to encode whatever you're encoding into the blocks, it prevents this from happening. Because this is like pretty much free or very low cost to publish AI generated books. But if you were to publish a book on the Bitcoin network, it's going to cost you a lot of money. So it's like, I just wonder your thoughts on that, because now if we're at the point where you can produce AI generated text that's indiscernible from human text, like what would stop somebody from just taking something like what you generated and saying, well, I do think it's actually worth it. I'm going to pay $500 to encode this AI generated text on the Bitcoin network.
Yeah, it's a hard problem. I love the idea. I don't know how it works at scale. And I think this is the difficulty, is that the scale at which you can generate slop is exponential, or at least it feels that way, right? There's this kind of
the problem is the slop, like the slop. We only view slop as bad AI output.
Right.
We don't view all AI output as slop.
Right, exactly. And this is it's a difficult problem, because just because something is generated by a large language model does not inherently make it slop. But there is a way in which your inputs are going to either make it you can generate something that has no efficacy or any potential. You can generate something that is extremely potent. Those are different issues than whether this is going to be good or virtuous, and have, if it's going to derive a good seed in someone when they think about it, versus is this going to degenerate the person. So I think there's a cause and effect kind of thing that we need to start looking at, that isn't checking so much for the things that we know when we read something that's like full of slop hedging, and just these kind of like roundabout probabilistic outputs. People are going to be using these tools more often, and they're going to be offloading cognitive function to it. And it's going to start thinking the person's thoughts for them. Cognitive surrender is one way you can look at it. It's externalized cognition, but any of these ways that you look at it, it's going to have an effect on us because we are living in an extremely, it's a highly charged environment of all these logismi. Not only those logismi used to just be the thoughts that surround the monastics in the desert, right? Now they are everything you see when you scroll through Instagram, Facebook, X. I can create content at scale that is so coherent and has the potential to, lead people down whatever metaphysical path I want to lead them. That's what makes this so dangerous. Is like,
Yeah.
Who is saying that I'm a virtuous person, right? Like this is the kinds of things that you can do if you are Machiavellian and you can extend your cognition into the world through speech. If you have high verbal fluency, if you have spatial intelligence, these kinds of things, you can formalize in understanding of the world and then execute upon it by referencing your own ideas, which are seeds. They're generative seeds of something that is going to be derived. The problem is spiritual. It extends far beyond the kind of like authorship issue. Like I have authorship and scrutiny notices on every single one of my documents because I don't want people to read it and think that I wrote it. I certainly did not. And there's this kind of the seed of it, my thought is in the prompt that I give, but what's derived is there could be all sorts of consequences from the derivation that I didn't think about, right? It's just coherent that would be something that is explored when I give an idea, right? So this kind of works like when you have that at scale, it's less about who authored this and more about like what is behind this coherent thing that has been authored.
James Poulos calls it the digital politics of spiritual war.
Yeah, that's on it. I think that's right there. It's like these are. I think this is. If we can't get through this as a human, body politic, we don't understand that there is this true implicit, baked into everything you do. There is a valence toward either good or evil, and even when you try to do well, you can still get something that's false, deeply problematic without malice. You have to be explicitly good, explicitly aligned to something that's greater than yourself in order to ensure that when you partake in something like what I've done, you are not generating something that is going to be only negative in its effects. I can't say that what I've done is not going to have any negative effects. I think someone could take the methodology that I've made explicit and then use it to do extremely misaligned things, misanthropic things. This is, it's deeply concerning to me, but I feel like people are already doing this. They just perhaps haven't formalized it. So that's why I've made it public.
So, and there is one, I'll wrap things up here. I know you got limited time, and I appreciate you, taking the time to do this. It's a very important conversation here, but I did want to show one of the other projects, because you do have a lot of projects you work on. This, I thought, was interesting here. Letters from Father Seraphim Rose, because I've been talking about this for a long time, and I have a good friend, Timothy Honeycutt. I'm sure you probably know him. He's kind of like I consider him like the prime, like he's the source for like Father Seraphim's work online. Like he knows where everything is. He's got it all archived, and he said a lot of these letters are only available online. So like even if you were to read the published book version of this is like they got those letters from online. They were all, I think, archived by Father Alexis Young, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So this is the point I've been trying to remind people, like the importance of archiving Orthodox works online, is because we're actually in all cases, you're completely trusting the maintainer of that site to keep the site up and running, and then there's also all these other variables that could potentially make that site not be available anymore. And then what happens? You lose everything. Like then they're just gone because everyone's just relying on those sites being, those URLs being accessible, the code working. It's like there's so many variables in a site being maintained. A lot of them are very old. Like you can tell that they haven't been updated since, maybe 20 years or something. And they're like, I know for a lot of these letters, they're just pretty much like plain text on a website somewhere. Like they're not formatted or anything. And so you've done this. This is clearly, so as someone who I used to be a web developer myself. And so I can tell, this is a whole other thing that we don't have to get into this, but like I can tell now a front end that's been generated by Claude. It has a very particular style. It likes to use these certain fonts. There's all these like identifiers for front end components of a Claude generated site. But that's like a secondary thing. It's like, that's fine because why go through the effort of building a whole front end when you could generate this in single output, right? That's to me useful. That's a useful use case for AI.
Right.
But what you've done here is built this whole site that archives his all his letters. It's like modern, it's like really accessible. It's searchable. I don't know if this is a fuzzy search, but yeah, it looks like it is. Super useful because you can't do this on the only other version that's out there, which is just you have to click through all these links and know what you're even looking for. Like this is all very well organized. Super useful to have this. Like this is the kind of stuff I encourage people to download an offline archive of this, and you can do that with using a zim file. You can actually compress this entire site to a single file called a zim file, and upload it to a self-hosted instance of Kiwix and have this entire thing accessible offline. I encourage everyone to do that. That's like very important work to do, to not rely on the internet for these very invaluable spiritual works, especially from now we're going to have more and more saints in the digital age that have writings online. It's like we need to do this work to make this stuff available offline. If we're not actually publishing the physical books, you don't have to be a publisher. You can just do this yourself. So I think this is incredibly valuable. This is something that I support AI use case for. Because you don't have to be a coder to do this now. If you just learn how to use the constraints that you built, you can do this yourself. You can do this kind of thing in like probably a weekend or something.
Yeah, absolutely. You're exactly right. Like, just give it the right constraints, or at least think about it. Use a disciplined way of thinking about what you're doing. Like, for instance, this here, I decided exactly as you said because of accessibility issues, but also because I had never seen anywhere where Father Alexei Young's letter excerpts from letters from Father Seraphim were interpolated with the rest of the collection of his letters that were published in 2016 online. So what I did is just interpolate those together. So within the timeline of the letters that were already available, I just added in wherever Father Alexei's excerpts were. So you'll see those interpolated within on that sidebar too. And it's helpful for me, like I can pull it up on my phone and then I use the voice to text.
Yeah, it's mobile friendly. Yeah, like this I think is very important for us to be doing this kind of thing. So if all the AI stuff, if all the these resolved documents are over your head, like just learn the basic. I mean, really, I would say like on the kind of like beginner level, just use the 7 constraints that are in the, like you just go here and go to the start the entrace stack and just copy that. That's kind of all you need to know, right? I mean, is that fair to say? Like just for the average user, just use this here, copy it, enter it into a project in Claude or whatever you use. And this will at least drastically improve the quality of your outputs, but use it for a purpose that, you like talk about catechizing the bots, like put it to work for the church, Put it to work for the church and make it build stuff like this. When while we can. So yeah, this I support for sure. I would never, condemn the use of AI for this purpose, for sure. This is really something that is amazing. I'm going to sound like a techno optimist now, but it's really amazing that you can actually do this as a non-programmer now.
Yeah, yeah, and I wish I had at the time that I created this site, I didn't have any of those tools available to me. But now you can have one of these spun up within just a few minutes, and just a couple prompts away.
Yeah, in many cases it'll almost default to building an HTML site for like a longer output.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, this is just really useful. And is there any other projects that you have that are similar?
Yeah, I've got a few. Essentialbeliefs.org is the OCA's official catechism, so you'll find that online.
Oh yeah.
That's probably my most visited site.
Wow.
I think 50,000. I think it gets about 50,000 unique visitors a month.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, it's blown up. Also, the letters from Father Seraphim it's funny, within the month leading up to his, within the meeting at Munich, it got a substantial amount of new visitors. So I think
looks like there's a dark mode.
Oh, yeah, there's a dark mode issue. I got to fix that. Also, oakrid.org is the prologue from Oakrid, or prologue of Oakrid. You can find there. And that's ochrid.org. I think there's a lot of different ways there's a lot of different prologues online. This is one that.
Oh, this is cool.
Yeah, it's got the daily readings by default from the prologue, and
wow.
I would say, anyone who's just like coming to the Orthodox faith, the prologue is very hard to beat. So it's gonna put you like right into contact with the saints. And
yeah, this is great. So what did you scrape this from another site?
So what I did was there was, I think the web archive had the copy that Rocore Australia was hosting. So they would link to the old web archive for it, and it would take about 5 minutes to load each page. It was miserable, so I scraped it from the web archive in order to save it. The Western Serbian diocese somehow, I don't know what happened, but something cataclysmic to their website, and they lost everything. That's why
what I mean. It's like you could just wake up and that's gone.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly right. Yeah, now if you see if you go to their website, it doesn't have the E in Serb anymore. It's just SRB. I think it's because they lost everything.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, it's like a lot of these. They're maintained by monasteries who they don't know how to, they don't know how to maintain a code base or a large website as they expand. Well, a big one is the Orthodox Wiki.
Right. Yeah, that's no longer maintained, is it?
I don't think so. Is it orthodoxwiki.org?
Yeah, I think it's hosted, but I think it's no longer maintained. I'm not sure why. It could just be the maintenance burden was.
It's not even HTTPS. It's like. I don't know if that's what the link is, but
yeah, and you can reseed the internet. There's so much slop now on the internet. You can, with coherent outputs, you can actually reseed the bots with something that's catechetical. Get something good in their data.
This might be down.
Is it down? Oh no.
Yeah, it's timing out. I mean, this is we're seeing this in real time. Exactly what I was talking about. The Orthodox Wiki now is for some reason it's timing out. I can't even access it. So that has a wealth of knowledge on it that we can't really afford to not have access to it.
Yeah, that's concerning. Jeez. Okay, it's loading very slowly.
Okay, there it is. Yeah, it took 2 minutes, but I have this whole thing archived offline, but. Yeah, this is not maintained. It was the last. Does it tell you? I think it tells you the last entry. This is one. I think it's one priest maintaining this.
Yeah,
it's what happens when he reposes. What happened? It's
right.
We're just not prepared for link rot, for all these things that could happen on the web. We're just really behind. So this kind of thing where you're just putting it into giving it kind of a fresh front end, and just spreading it out more, even if it's still dependent on a URL and you maintaining it. It's like, just spread it out more. If we have 20 people do that, it's a lot less likely that you're not going to be able to access that one day.
Right.
So yeah, this is.
Yeah, it's a valuable resource. There's a lot on there that's referenced in a lot of places too. You know, the way that web works with hyperlinks, it's like it all relies on itself, right? So when
it says 13 million hits on this website, and it's maintained by one guy.
Yeah, wow.
So
yeah,
all right,
I host some stuff.
And then real quick, the one question I had, like, if you wanted to just address this real quick, because I saw it in the chat, and I had this question too. Your take on local LLMs, is that objectively better to use, like, because they don't have all the corporate kind of built-in integrations of all the stuff that we're trying to fight here?
Yeah, I wish I had access to local models. I wish I had the compute for it.
That's the problem.
Yeah. So, and also, they're getting extremely good. Even with the quantized models are getting better too. So, I think pretty soon we're going to have local models that can run on like an M1, M2 MacBook Pro.
Well, they have them already.
Yeah,
they're good. They're just not like, in comparison to like the cloud-hosted ones. They're just slow, and I mean, like you said, it takes up more compute. You can't do something like generate what Claude does in one output, where it's like, here's an entire website. Like you don't have the compute to do that. The average person doesn't, at least, but. Ben says Hugging Face and Olama have micro models that'll run on a desktop. Yeah, that's what we're talking about. Yeah, Hugging Face.
Yeah, I think there is some sort of threshold that gets crossed with these massive, parameter models. Like, I think Mythos is like, into the trillion or something figures, which is insane. It's an incredible amount of. It's almost unintelligible, and so you're gonna get something that is less powerful, but if you know how to use it, you can get results.
And what you're using it for, because in many cases the limitations of the local model might not be an issue for you if you know exactly what you're using it for. So if you're not using it to, generate like AI slop videos and even webs like what we're just looking at, like an entire website, and you just want it to do really kind of simple tasks, like, then you could probably still run it on an M1 or something. And don't look at it as I think this is the biggest shift I've had, is that I used to look at things with LLMs as engineering problems. I don't look at them like that at all anymore. I look at them as philosophical problems. I think we're going to see a huge shift. We're already probably seeing it right now. Is that Silicon Valley is hiring philosophers now. Every Orthodox Christian is a philosopher because it's the way that they live their life. The life that they live is informed by the philosophy of the church, and that's put into practice. So, don't think that a chatbot is just a neutral tool. It's certainly not neutral. You get to discipline its use into something virtuous. And, at its stasis, before you prompt anything, it's filled with the incoherence of, humanity's burden of sin and transgression. So that's the reality. You get to do it with that what you want. Well, that's a great sentiment to end things here. So thank you so much for your time, Jared. I've super enjoyed this conversation. I think this is incredibly valuable. I apologize to those who are trying to tune in on YouTube. We had another catastrophe there, but this was on Substack. I'll be uploading it to YouTube later. So I hope this was valuable to you in your daily life. And again, I encourage you to find a purpose for why you're using AI. If you are one of these people who use it, find your reason for using it. And I think that, like I said, maybe this is just my take, but that might be one of the best use cases I can think of, is to actually just improve upon what is out there and improve content for the church, expand the accessibility of these valuable resources we have as Orthodoxy grows, especially online. That's becoming increasingly important. So, yeah, any other final
Yeah.
words?
Yeah. Lastly, thank you so much for having me on. And I want to give like at the very end of this, a disclaimer that this is a research project that I have begun within the last couple months. So there's nothing here that is final, nor is there anything here that I can say, yes, do this. So I cannot give you an imperative a virtuous imperative to
Yeah.
use this. I think that it's beneficial. If I didn't think that, I wouldn't put this out. But also, I think there are extremely problematic realities that we're dealing
Yes.
with, and that is, I think, the sobriety that we should take to our use with chatbots is. This is, I feel like this is what Saint Seraphim Rose is talking about, part of the religion of the future, and we're experiencing maybe a little foretaste of that, depending on your point of view. But it's something we need to be aware of, that when we're partaking of these technologies, we have to be mindful of our use, and discipline it. Because if we don't, we're going to end up partaking in a communion with the rest of humanity that is being lured into this kind of demonic, inflationary kind of AI consciousness thing, and the aliens, right? The aliens that are coming out and are going to be telling us all the things that are true.
Oh
And,
yeah.
it's going to reinterpret the Bible. So
Well,
all of
people are
those.
going to be using it. They're going to be consulting AI to make sense
Right.
of this alien deception.
Exactly. Yeah. So you can see how thick and fast the delusions are coming in. So, pray to Saint Seraphim Rose when he's
Yes.
canonized. Pray to him, and
Yes.
that he would give you, discernment, because he spoke about in the late '70s everything that we're seeing now.
Yep.
So, yeah, be watchful. It's later than you think.
Indeed. All right, brother. Thank you
Right.
again, and yeah, we'll be in touch. So yeah, thanks for even reaching out to me with this. I really appreciate it. It was something I wouldn't have known about that it even existed unless you had brought it to me. So hope
Yeah.
that
Hey,
we can spread the word now.
thank you for having me on, and thank you for looking into it, and thank you to all your listeners.
Yeah, man. All right. Take care, guys. God bless you all. Christ is risen, and we'll see you next week.
Glory to